constructing an accessory structure for licensed non-residential daycare use, expanding the parking area and changing the mix of uses, 916 Shelburne Road. This was sketched last time, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, who is here for the applicant?
Robert and Teresa Davis are here and several other folks.
Okay. Anybody else here for the applicant? Just for the applicant first.
Catherine Lang, architect at Freeman French Freeman.
Thank you. Anybody else for the applicant?
Yep. Paul Bover, Engineering Ventures, site engineer for the project.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else for the applicant?
Yep, Paul Simon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thanks. Who would like to start off with an overview, and then we'll get into, go walk through the staff comments?
I think Robert or Teresa, would you like to give an overview of the project?
You can do it.
Keep in mind, we have a pretty full agenda and we have seen this at sketch.
Okay.
You know, it's existing educational facility with childcare use, and what we're looking to do is expand that to actually going to demo the carriage house and then replace it with a new structure approximately the same size, but we're going to actually move that new structure, accessory building, 3 feet west so we can get it out of the setback, and then expand the parking area, and then add plantings and, you know, provide the program for the Davis Studios there. The program is already there. From what I understand, it's already in the current building with approximately 20 students. But it'll move from that building to the accessory building and have, I believe, 26 students, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so we got quite a few staff comments, so what I'll try to do is go, well, obviously I won't read them in the board here. Okay, first comment, page 3 regarding the traffic overlay district. Again, we had the traffic reviewer, temporarily without a public works director.
I'm going to interrupt for just a second while Delilah pulls up. So around noon today, Paul sent us his responses in writing there. I think.
Okay, so again, this PM peak hour, the Appendix B. So there's the response. I guess if you want to summarize that, you don't need to read it.
Yeah, we can.
Maybe let's read it. This is the first time we've all seen it. Let's take 30 seconds to read that here. So take a minute here. All right, I see the comment there. Members, you've had an opportunity to read it. Paul, you want to add anything to that comment? I guess my quick question was, how does, I get the point that the earlier closing and pickup time is the ITE 565 say have standardized pickup times, and now this is a slight deviation, or?
Yeah, so.
It's usually PM peak hour that we're looking at, so the PM and AM peak hours. So if you're off center on the peak hours, you would make an adjustment to that.
Okay.
Right, and although it is a licensed child care facility, and they have, you know, that age range, the pickup is like a school hour pickup around 3 o'clock. So it's not, you know, at that PM peak hour of 5 o'clock.
Gotcha.
So I have some questions about this. This was a big scramble on our part to kind of deal with this coming in today because we thought this was a big deal. But this property has a trip limit of 26 trips. And if the applicant goes over that, they have to. So it's if they go over it, it's a big deal. And the initial assessment from BFJ is that it looks of an enforcement arm to go out and make sure that the child care facility is never open past 3 p.m. So whether that is that it's being used for a different program after 3 p.m. and therefore they could physically never have both groups of children there at the same time, or if it's because, you know, some restriction put on them by Act 250, who does have an enforcement arm or something. But if it's the former, and it's because there's a after-school program happening, then I would argue that the after-school trips would have to be added in. And so I think basically what I'm saying is that this needs some more work between staff and the applicant, and then we can kind of propose a solution.
Yeah, either way, we're gonna need, there's gonna be another dialogue on this continuing at the next meeting and in the next week or two as more data gets. Any other comments from board members? Go
I'm a
ahead.
little, I don't quite understand why 3 o'clock is a magic number. I mean, peak hour starts at 5, right? Or what time when is peak hour?
4 to 6. So if they pick up is at 3, then they're missing peak and they're not contributing to peak traffic.
All right, so if we simply had a condition that everybody had to be out of there by 3:45, you know, that's
Well,
what
to
we would
use your phrase, our
put of our conditions than we are with a major developer where we simply put in a condition that we then have dubious enforcement for.
okay.
I have a question for the applicant. Can you describe any programming that takes place after 3 o'clock?
That question. Well, what I would like to say is that be very comfortable with a conditional approval. And if we want to expand our programming, we'd be happy to do a traffic study.
After-school program shall not exceed 16 students.
It's getting a little bit into micromanagement details I don't want to get into right now. We know we're gonna, let's get, we got quite a few staff comments, so let's circle back to this one later. Any board members have any other additional comment on this issue? Okay, all right, let's move on. All right, the next staff comment, page 6. All right, again, this will be, I guess, as you keep tweaking best I can say with this one, staff recommends the DRB require the applicant to communicate with V-Trans, determining if mitigation is required. So I guess to the extent that you're having a dialogue with the consultant and further tweaking these numbers, that you guys coordinate with V-Trans to get some feedback as soon as you can.
I did receive a letter of intent from V-Trans, so V-Trans has said that they intend to approve this project.
Okay, thanks. All right. Any board members have any comments on item 2? All right, number 3 regarding access and circulation. This is providing safe access to abutting properties. Road to provide connectivity for users or vehicle.
I would like to address that. Typically, when people are coming into the property and they are not driving in, they actually access us through the Lindenwood. There's a little gap in the hedge there. And so a lot of times people are coming from the bike from the bike paths that come past Farrell Park, and or if they're walking, it's just much safer for them to access there. So we think the way the natural traffic works, it makes more sense to have a pathway from the carriage house to that gap in the hedge in Lindenwood. And that would be just the way that people are currently using that. In addition, when we do take kids to the park, that is the direction that we would go, as opposed to walking straight out to Shelburne Road, which is really busy and heavily trafficked and around the corner.
Mm-hmm. And is there any kind of formalized path there now with bark or gravel or anything, or?
There's an old that was a partial driveway, and so for maybe a third of the way.
Still muted, Paul.
Okay, sorry about that. I did not add that to the plan. I thought we'd discuss it looking at the plan, because the staff comment was about getting it out to Route 7. And like you said, Teresa, it might make better sense for the neighborhood and the bike connections and you know, if we were to do this, that gravel stone dust path between the two buildings just go north. So that's your thought, correct?
Yes, that would meet the function of the property best.
All right. Marla, I guess I have a question for you, because this is a little, I haven't seen this one in a while, this provision, or put it into, does the main building in the center of the lot have a sidewalk connection to Shelburne Road?
It does not,
Does not. So why would we require it for the carriage house?
because this rule wasn't in place when the main building was built.
Ah, okay. So there's no retrofit requirement, like when somebody comes back in, we always make them get a bike path, so why don't we?
Yeah, no, this one only applies if they change more than 35% of the street-facing facade.
Okay. All right, board members, thoughts on this?
So I drew a little purple line where I think that, Paul, you were talking about, and actually,
Yes, that's
you may
correct.
have the ability to draw too.
Board members,
So Marla, you're telling me the regulations don't require us to require them to provide a connection out to Shelburne Road, correct?
No.
Because they're not, okay.
That's
'Cause
not what I'm saying.
Oh, what are you saying?
Sorry, too many things are opening. So I'm gonna go back to the staff. That's all right. So in this case, the urban design overlay would require a sidewalk connection to Shelburne Road. Because the new building is not in the urban design overlay, it's set back, that element would not be required. The applicable thing here is provide safe access to abutting properties for motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians, including safe site distances, separation distances, and
We just have to formalize
This
it,
is
right?
Jim. This is Jim. I mean, I think living connected.
as abutting properties, does this language imply there needs to be access to every single abutting property?
Well, that's another staff comment. And requirement that connections between commercial properties be provided.
Right, I'm just looking at this whole language. This language in number 7 would imply that you need a path on all 4 points of the compass.
Well, we'll get to that one.
But, all right, thanks. Yeah, I like the idea of the path, and it embraces, makes some connectivity with the neighborhood, the sidewalk, which is nice, and yeah, I like that potential solution, so. All right, let's keep moving on here. To number 4 on page 8. Staff recommends the DRB require the applicant to obtain a preliminary water and wastewater allocation prior to closing the hearing and obtain a grease interceptor permit prior to issuance of a zoning permit.
I can
Applicant,
speak to that.
thank you, Paul.
The,
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we now have the water allocation from JNATO, so we're good on that one. For wastewater and water, for that matter, this project creates reduced flows, so there's reduced demand on this. So it's really a bookkeeping exercise. I talked to Tom DePietro about both the grease trap, and the general wastewater allocation requirements. So we have submitted applications for those. Again, it's a reduction in demand, so there really shouldn't be any issue with that. Tom was okay with the grease trap as included already in the building, so he didn't have any issue there.
The water allocation has been approved.
Okay, great, thank you. And you'll be able to get that grease interceptor permit?
Yeah, I've already talked to Tom DePietro about that, and he didn't have any issue with what's there. So I'd hope that the hearing doesn't have to be held for that, but we should have those things all coming in soon.
Okay, thank you. Board members?
I'm okay with all those responses and the direction it's going right now.
Okay. All right, moving on to item 5. Regarding, staff recommends the DRB require the applicant to provide further information regarding the dumpsters and associated fencing before closing the hearing. Where'd that green text go? There you go, perfect. All right, take a minute to read that in 30 seconds. Adjacent to other commercial lots to provide a driveway connection to any adjacent commercial lot. The LDRs will go on. That is the only abutting commercial property is located to the south, and staff considers this criterion is not met for that property. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to provide on the plans and record a 20-foot cross-lot easement to the east of the stormwater treatment area on the site to the benefit of the adjacent property to the south, parcel ID 1540-00930. If such a connection were appropriate in the future, it would require reconfiguration of the parking spaces proposed in that location. And let's take 30 seconds to read the green response.
Can we get it back?
Yep, she's gonna bring it up here. I'll take a look at the green here. Language. All right, take 30 seconds to read that, if everybody can. Yeah,
Revised sheet 2.1, it was in the,
got that handy, or is
It's in the thing that you have open, but I have no idea what page it's gonna be on.
you know what page that might be on in the email you sent?
No, because he sent it as individual files and I mushed it all into one,
oh,
so he's not gonna
yeah.
know.
You,
Hey.
participants in the meeting can draw on this drawing, so you could show the board on this drawing
Okay.
with annotations out where you're talking about.
Okay. Paul, did you want to draw that in?
I'm trying to figure out where the drawing tools are, but
I think they're called annotate.
I can describe it while you try to draw it. But basically, it'll be an L-shaped connection because it needs to continue as a 20-foot easement to the property line along Shelburne Road, so that access is complete. You can't dead end it, basically. So we have it come as a right turn at those first two the spaces on the right. Of course, those spaces on the right are 9 by 18. So we have 2 feet to the west of those spaces as well as part of that easement. And then that easement,
Back up for me. What corner, we're in the southwest corner, essentially?
yes.
yeah, sorry, I haven't figured out how to draw on this thing yet, so.
I think we found it, so Delilah's just gonna pull it up just a second.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, although it's unlikely that the southern property owners are going to want to use this connection because, you know, there's more likely to be traffic stacked up in front of this driveway than.
So I see,
All right. Board
Yeah,
members, any comment on this? All right, seems pretty straightforward. This is regarding the parking angles. The applicant is proposing to make the parking stalls exactly the minimum width and length required. It meets the aisle width by exceeding it by 2 feet. If the applicant were to meet the specific requirement, there would be 2 feet less pavement on the site, which would move the parking area 2 feet farther from abutters to the south. Staff recommends the board discuss reducing the width of the aisle to increase distance from the abutters and reducing total impervious surface. What were your,
I could,
yeah, go ahead, go ahead, Paul.
sure, I could speak to that a little bit. So the existing drive already is really wide. So what we did was maintain that in our first design. And then we received the staff comment. And so because we're repaving anyway, it does make sense to pull that back. But you can even see that island, I guess, between the two single lots there has grown as well. So we're actually creating more green space. And if you zoom in a little bit there where that C17 is, or the snow storage areas there, you can see the old pavement location is 3 or 4 feet, there. So we're actually creating more green space as suggested by staff along that south side. So, we're even moving it up more than what's existing now.
Is, just to be clear with staff, the 26 feet provided, or the 24 feet is a minimum, right?
it's a standard drive aisle width.
Yeah,
If you had 26 feet, you'd notice.
yeah.
So if you're repaving the lot anyway and putting down all new paving, are you adverse to reducing it another 2 feet and gaining more green space and less.
I guess you want to go back to the comments section. So based on the provided floor plans and proposed uses, the applicant is not meeting the requirements for either short-term or long-term bicycle parking or for closed lockers. No showers or changing facilities are required. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to modify the plans to provide the required bike parking and closed locker prior to closing the hearing. Let's see. And if you could, all right, so there is, if you can blow that up, that'd be great, because I'm blind without my glasses. Thank you. All right, so the short-term parking is met with the use of the existing 10-space bike rack. Okay, there it is.
Yeah, that doesn't meet our regulations.
The photo, you mean, or the bike rack itself?
The bike rack itself.
So Marla, does it need to be secured, or why wouldn't it meet the
Yeah,
regulations?
Delilah can explain. She just had her mic off. Sorry.
Yeah, we, for existing bike racks that don't meet the current standards for the approved type of bike racks and the regulations, we can give credit for existing, but for these old-timey school-style racks, we can give, since this one's so long, typically if it's like a shorter one, you have to be able to lock your bike frame to the rack, which is why these aren't as useful as a U-frame, U-style rack. So you can lock a bike to one end by its frame, and you can lock a bike to at the other end by its frame. And since this is so long, we could give you credit for a third bike parking space because you could lock a bike across that long.
I think it'd be 4, right?
Before.
Or 4
I guess
if
you'd
they
have to move it away
if they
from the wall.
staggered,
Well, I
Yeah,
was just
you'd
gonna
have
say
to move
one
it
on
away
each
from the wall.
side, and then one on each end.
and then one on each end. So
But it'd have to be moved away from the wall, and it would have to be secured.
and it have to be firmly affixed to the ground. So we could grant you credit for 4 bicycle parking spaces with this one rack, but you would still require others.
Okay, so the condition would be we can use it, but we got to move it away from the wall a little bit, and we need to secure it to the ground.
Yes.
Okay.
So for short term, they're required to have 4. For long term, they're required to have 2. Long term is secured and protects the bike fully from the elements. So I think they had a response to that as well.
All right. Looks pretty straightforward. Board members?
Yeah, so it sounds like as long as they move that existing rack away from the wall and affix it to the ground, they meet the short-term parking requirement of 4, and they're testifying they're going to provide the 2 long-term and a changing locker. So I'm fine with their meeting of the condition.
Can I ask a question? You say within the ground floor level of the stair tower of primary building, see landscape plan. So if I look at the landscape plan, we don't have to do it right now, but I'm going to do trust and verify here. If I look at the landscape plan, it's going to show me how you're going to get 2 bikes parked there.
We can provide you, we will provide you an internal plan of that. Catherine's here, she could speak to that, but we will provide a mock-up of that. It's just the best place because it's got a ton of room and space for at least 2 bikes, so we can fit it.
Delilah,
And
is
it's
that
next
sort
to
of
the
thing we would allow
short-term.
as a condition?
To amend the plans to show
To demonstrate that the long-term bike rack?
Yeah, we've done that.
Okay, so we could do that as a condition.
All right. Thank you. Moving right along to number 9. The applicant has provided for no interior landscaped islands, includes a total of 44 spaces. This criterion has not been met. Staff recommends the DRB require the applicant to provide plans with at least 10% of interior of the parking lot with landscaped islands. This could include landscaping replacing proposed parking spaces as long as they meet the 10% requirement. Staff recommends the landscape islands be located to preserve existing mature trees.
Or you want me to read it?
Go ahead, you can read it while we look at the plans there.
So part of, you know, the requirement for interior landscape islands. So, you know, we don't have either of those. So, and we've also, like staff recommended, pushed this.
7. So that's more than 28.
Those aren't, you know, it's contiguous. It's in that row. So those
The word's
aren't touching. You
contiguous.
have the vehicular
The word is
aisle there.
contiguous, and it means the parking area. You don't get to count one side and then the other side. It's that parking area is 15 plus 11 plus 6.
So how would you fit an interior island in a single
Oh, I'd be happy to show
circulation
you.
lane?
I would be happy to draw on it. Hang on, let me annotate it with something like that, where those three maybe not those three, that's a terrible example. Those three become a parking lot island, and those two become a parking lot island. And then you put your trees.
Yeah, so the diagram you have in the regulations 13-4 creates what an internal landscape island is and what's required based on Kathleen Ryan did a kind of a mocked up version of what that would be for an internal island, and it's definitely not what you just drew.
I can tell you that there are years and dozens of examples of precedent of that being an interior parking lot island and this being how the regulations are interpreted. Either. So how would this possibly be implemented if it had to be literally?
I mean, I'm not objecting if there were room in this parking lot, you know, whatever. Just
No, hold on a second, Robert. Let me just hear from more of the board members on this. Mark, you got something on this?
Yeah. I would just say that, you know, again, I think we can review, we can interpret, we can, I guess, for lack of a better word, argue what contiguous parking spaces defines. I'm kind of with Marla on it that in my 15 years on the board, you know, we have always reviewed the number, you know, they're contiguous with a common aisle as well. So, you know, you've got, you know, more than 28 asphalt, it needs to be broken up with 10% landscape islands so you don't have just that, a field of asphalt in an area that's larger than 28 spaces. So I see where Marla's, you know, coming from, and that's the way we've always looked at them from a board standpoint.
Yeah, any other board members?
Dan, this is Jim. I guess I'm feeling that it says. So I mean, that's not 28 contiguous, and there's one lane. So I'm not seeing it as a requirement.
Okay, any other board members?
I think it'd be a real loss if we went that direction.
Just hold on, man. We'll get there. Are there any other board members?
Well, I didn't write the reg. I don't feel this one as open to interpretation.
Yeah. I'll dive in on this. So, having seen this in South Burlington, both while serving on the DRB and then in prior experience pinch hitting in the city office, this has always been the principle around this regulation, and we've applied it to, or the city has applied it to numerous developments for this exact reason. And so the practice as well as the understanding that has always been held up is that, the point is so you don't have a sea of asphalt. They are just as Washington is part of the contiguous lower 48, even though Florida is the other way around. You know, it's the same situation. So I'm not going to get into if you want to challenge the decision of the board on this, feel free, and then maybe the Supreme Court would weigh in on the definition of what is a contiguous parking space. But the common practice here, as well as other municipalities, with similar type of language about the principle of breaking it up with islands and plantings and things like that, is for that exact reason. And 28 spaces is the threshold level. We're not talking 29 spaces. We're 6 and 6. Or whatever that is, I can't quite see. So that's my understanding of it. So
I think it is not unreasonable to interpret contiguous here to mean not separated by any green space or substantial structure.
Yeah.
which is in fact how it's been interpreted for years, according to Mark, who's been around long enough to know that interpretation, if for no other reason than on the basis of precedent and because it's not unreasonable.
So what you're saying is you can have a double loaded parking lot with 27 spaces, 54 space, and that's a large parking lot, you know? So, I mean, that's where the nature of, you know, the 28, I think, is, you know, once you're below, it's basically saying a 14 by 14, above a 14 by 14 on both sides. Once you get above that, you have to have landscape islands, and that's reasonable.
Well, that parking area, including both sides and the aisle, depending how you cut at the end, is around, you know, under 11,000, it's like 10,800 square feet. So if we took a parking space worth and did a landscape island, we'd be good there.
I think we'd have to see how it works out.
Yeah. It's 162 square feet, just to, yeah,
Right.
something like that.
Is this the overall bus? How many extra?
The things, and it feels like there's ambiguity in those regs, but I accept your, if you want us to put an island in, great. I would just say that it's frustrating because if you look at the front, and we've been around this before, there's like, what is it, 6 spaces in the front? If we were allowed to expand that existing parking by like 8 feet or something, we could double up the parking in the front. But because of your no parking in the front of the building, and when we expand it, it would be in that little grass strip to Shelburne Road. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, except for your concern about not letting us do something and setting a precedent and parking in the front. It's not a practical thing, but I guess I'm whining about it, and I apologize, but it is kind of not pragmatic.
Well, and I did want to just say there are already some islands that exist in the parking lot currently. So probably we would just be leaving one of those or both.
Yeah, I
of
think you
those.
can see it there in the bottom or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
like that little middle.
The bottom
So-
center there, yeah.
I think we probably leave, you know, a piece of one. It's basically a 9-foot width or something like that, and create
Okay.
an island that you put a tree in, and you
Like
lose
just-
one space. Be kind of a compromise.
All right,
What we've
thanks.
what we've always asked for is just, you know, you work with Marlon, you show the calculations, and Marlon checks off the box saying,
Yeah.
Can I jump in a little bit? And this is why I think it may have been precedent all along, but you have been calculating the total number of spaces and then determining, 10% of that for these internal islands. But I mean, Paul, you just said it's about 10,800 square feet.
Yeah.
So divide that by 10%, right? It's the 10% requirement. That's 1,800. And then divide that by your 162, because you get 162
Yeah, I did. Sorry.
square feet, right?
Dropped an extra zero.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no,
So-
you're right.
But isn't that 7 spaces?
Yeah,
That's a bunch.
yeah.
like, island between the 6 spaces.
Okay. Thanks. We've turned this ground over many
All right.
times over. Board members, any more on this? And I'll throw my colleagues under the bus. We don't write the regs. We just interpret them. So, but the city council does not hold that against me. So, and the planning commission, though. It's hard because you try to write a reg to do the best you can, but there's always things that don't quite fit, especially with redevelopment of a property. So, okay. City arborist had some comments. Let's take a minute to read the response. They're on number 1, recommend planting dogwoods and coneflower further edge. So there's the response. Take a minute to read that. Planting area. Okay. All right, the next one should include more detailed tree protection plan. Response, tree protection, okay. Okay, the last one. Unless landscape credit is being given to preserving existing trees, the landscape value seems high. All right, and I'll read the response. Okay.
So staff's response to this was just about number one, because the other things are sort of discussed elsewhere in the document.
Okay. So,
So the comment was, number one, planting of dogwoods and coneflower should be farther off.
yeah.
With the additional vehicle drive width, they are farther off. So I would say that.
So you're okay with that now? They're moved farther away? Okay. All right, board members, anything on this?
Nope.
All right. Yeah, let's take a minute to digest number 11. If you can scroll up just a little bit more. I don't know how much more green there is. Okay. All right. This is regarding the one major deciduous tree. Staff recommends the DRB require additional major deciduous trees be planted in the areas to comply with this criterion. All right, let's take a minute to read that response. Thanks. That's perfect. Staff, did you have any comments on this?
I think that they have provided a plan that they should show you.
Okay, that'd be great. Want to pop that plan up there,
Yeah,
Delilah?
Delilah, I found it's on page 35. Nope, 34, I lied. Totally lied.
Oh, so, and we've adjusted the landscape schedule as well to show that as well. And you can see we showed where the short-term bike parking is, and you can see where the stair tower is where what we're asking is to get some credit on the perimeter landscaping for the existing trees that are around the perimeter of the parking lot. So in front of the primary building as well. And what we did is choose a variety that's more columnar in shape, so it doesn't branch out too much to hit the building facade.
Okay. And just for clarity, only because I noticed there were public comment about this, can you describe any existing mature trees that are proposed to be removed?
Yes, there are. See, we've got grading and stormwater and swales, and then handicap accessibility, the old grades. And if you've passed the primary building to get back to the existing carriage house, what we're doing to provide ADA accessibility, we have to grade. I think that first tree that's closest to the south is probably 28 feet. Well, you can see I threw some dimensions on there too, like the old hardwood whips and very strong cedar hedge that's along that south property line as well. And that is, you can see there's a 15-foot offset, or there's a line there. It's actually just as big as that. So that's already there. And then there's pictures that I've included in the responses too, to show how robust the existing landscaping already is in this area. So there's already that. And so all that perimeter landscaping and all those pictures that you'll see in those staff responses are plantings and trees that exist that are going to still remain. All those are, that's the cedar hedge that's pretty dense. There's crab apples in front of it. That'll all stay. That's along the south side. That's another view of the city line actually straddles between those two fences. Both fences are going to stay. Those trees are going to stay. And we're not counting like those trees along this as perimeter tree landscaping for the parking lot. We're counting the trees that are east side
Okay,
right there.
thank you.
So, and that's going to stay just like everything you see there is going to stay. So, and that's the east side behind the existing carriage house. So what will happen here, those trees will stay, of course, and the carriage house now will be conforming, right? Well, almost 3 feet. It's a little less than that. We just went the 3 feet. I think it was 2.7 or something like that. This one's in violation of the setback, so, or grandfathered, it's non-conforming. So the new building will be over more and
No.
I should note there are
You
two
could,
pines too. that
we
are
will
on the
provide
east.
a chance for public comment after we get through these staff comments and analysis and allow board feedback. So applicant, feedback to staff comments and discussion of each critical point of contention. Then we open it up for public comment, so. Okay, and if you have a chance, just sign it in on the back there, on that little sheet, on the back table there by the door. Yep, that'd be great. And you can just write, okay, so thank you for that photos and description, that helps.
So we had talked.
And that's
So-
one of the pines.
Marla was numbered to the far eastern end of the parking lot, and the existing vegetated tree proposed between should be increased to provide greater protection for that existing tree.
So here we're talking about, there's, well, can you get up a site plan quickly?
That was 35?
Yeah,
Or 34?
yeah. Sure, close enough. So on the far right-hand side of the page, here we're talking about, can I zoom in? Why is this so tiny? Is it good?
Want me to make it bigger?
I think I'm good. So they're proposing to retain this tree.
The one right on the eastern edge there is in green, existing perimeter deciduous tree to remain, that one?
So the
Yeah.
comment
Right,
here-
so that one would
Oh, I see.
remain, the two just north of that are the two pines, and those two would go. And then the next one, the fourth one, right, is an existing pine that's young enough that can stay. The problem with the pines, when they're close to one another like that and they grow, they're not branching, they're not well branching because they're competing with one another.
Right, so Paul, the
So-
comment here was that this parking area
Yeah,
is
oh,
too
sorry.
close to that
Yep.
tree, but it looks like you've moved it, so.
By Paul Boisvert, who's the civil engineer, but it's a thought, like, we don't need the 24-foot width completely to be the bump out, the back. You need a back end space, right, to turn around and then leave. I just think we can reduce that in half to 12 feet or so wide. So when we say, I'm also trying to save as many parking spaces as we can for the needs of the facility. I think this is a pretty good idea here to actually expand 12 feet north and still provide plenty of room pavement away if we can do it in this fashion.
Okay, quick, so if I'm seeing this correctly, on the eastern edge where it says 6 forsythia shrubs in light gray that are just to the east of those would be removed. Am I reading that correctly?
Right, and the little one, there's kind of 3 right there.
Okay,
Right,
there's
so
3.
that little one, no, that one would stay.
Okay,
The first one you X'd out would stay. The 2 just sat, there's 3 of them right there. The
Okay.
2, so between, what we're trying to do is provide room for the existing trees that are gonna stay.
I
And
got
so
you.
that
Okay,
they have healthy branching, so yeah, it's those 2 in
Gotcha.
between.
thank you. Marla, does that address your comment, number 12?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, board members, any more comments about this landscaping? We gotta keep cranking here.
Just so that also increases their landscape island calculation.
Yep,
Right,
so hopefully that all can be tweaked accordingly.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna keep moving on here. 13, staff recommends the DRB require applicant to indicate the boundaries of the snow storage area and provide snow storage not coincident with stormwater treatment or conveyance. So I see the snow storage there.
Oh, we have that on one of the civil sheets provided, addressed that. I think it's the,
Yeah, it's,
yes, C 2.1.
2-1 has it, yep.
page 31.
All right. Thanks. Who's doing that? Delilah? All right, thank you, Delilah. Thank you. All right, so the sheet flow's not gonna go through that? How's the stormwater getting into that area? I can't quite see the inlet.
For the east,
I mean, you know, snow storage is a challenge,
Oh, I know,
especially
yeah.
because it's difficult to enforce, you know.
Yeah,
Robert and Teresa aren't necessarily going to be there when their plow person shows up.
yeah. Yeah. And you got the play area in the back. Yeah, you pretty much kind of got the snow storage areas where you got them. And we don't require
I
any like
suppose I
fence posts or boulders or, you know, nice things to block the plows.
have an idea.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Paul, for designing your project for you, but it does occur to me that you were just saying that front parking area is sort of too narrow to be double loaded, but too wide to be single loaded? Could snow storage occur in that extra pavement?
You could probably do that. You'd have to be moving the snow at that point, and if you're moving the snow physically, you'd maybe put it somewhere else too. If you're actually going to load it, use a loader.
Do we ever approve language to the extent feasible, operators shall not? Yeah,
I mean, we could just say, you know, the top left and the far right are approved snow storage areas, and the ones on the bottom have to be removed from the plans. And it'll say in the decision, snow shall not be stored in stormwater treatment or conveyance areas.
well, so the C-17s are, yeah. That's the snow storage areas, yeah. Is there room in that C1 parking lot to put a little more snow in there or something? I don't know.
There's plenty. From what I guess Marla is saying is that the cloud that's going north-south could widen a little bit into the parking spaces, and you'd still park there, right? I mean, you'd be heading into where the snow pile is. Between the back of the parking space to the walkways, significantly large. It looks more than 30 feet.
I think it's 50 feet from
To the east side of the dumpster, I don't really have a problem with. It's relatively small and whatnot, but it does seem odd to have that big blob of C-17 right next. So if you can find something more workable, that'd be better. At least that's my point. Any board members, any more thoughts on that one? All right, I guess you got the feedback you need there. Moving on to item 14. The adjacent public streets are Shelburne Road and Lindenwood Drive. The proposed carriage house building screens the parking from Lindenwood Drive. From Shelburne Road, the parking is not screened and opportunities for further screening exist. So staff recommends the DRB require them to provide screening from Shelburne Road, which will also address some of the deficits in the landscape budget below. Is there that magic landscape plan with the green that might be helpful? Or whatever, if that's indeed the revised stuff that was sent?
Yep.
Okay, there we go.
So we've added a row, I believe, what the staff comments were.
On top.
Actually pretty durable plants. They're native too, but yeah, I mean, the thing is we can move them
Hey, if they can't survive a pile of snow on them, they don't deserve to be in Vermont, so.
Right.
Because it makes it a little more attractive to the passerby, and otherwise it's sort of a random green space in between the sidewalk.
The arborist typically recommends 10 feet between the edge of pavement and the landscaping for snow storage.
Okay,
We can do that.
Useful information to anyone.
sounds great, yeah. Yeah, you could put 2 rows of blueberries in there and expect a
Enough existing plants. I mean, I went back out there to document trees that were 6 inches or greater in diameter, and then I picked up a few more that are less than that, but there's a lot, like the cedar hedge, for instance, on the south side, that's significant, but it's not like, so we're not picking up like, okay, there's a tree here, a tree here, a tree here, a tree here, because it's mature, it's grown into one another, and it's there. So on the survey, it's kind of that cloud that you see. So you can see it extending into the space.
Hold on a sec, Delilah, could you go to the one? I know that was also a concern of some of the public comment too. Well, you kind of had it there in the previous one. Yeah, there. You go up one a little bit more, yeah. So you get that one.
Yeah, and so my observation on this would be that the board has, in the past, rely on retention of existing compliance with criteria, because adjoining property owners that are not subject to site plan review could cut down their trees at any time.
Okay.
So just something to keep in mind as you carry on this conversation.
Okay, the comments submitted that you put in green text, can we see those for item 15, just so we can read them carefully? And if you can blow it up a little bit, that'd be great. There we go. Oh, it's all the photos there. Okay, I got you. Here, I know it's Burlington. You can put your mask on. Anyway, all right. Let's take a minute to read this. All right. Okay. Okay, board members. Any thoughts on this, board members? So staff, just to be clear, nothing they're proposing is relying on the abutting property owners maintaining landscape, right? Or do you feel it's adequate, or?
I was having a difficult time telling from the photos. I think because I was looking on my own screen at the landscaping plan at the same time, and I think some of the things that they're showing are on adjoining property. Like the big thick section of cedar hedge, I think is not adjacent to the parking area. Or sorry, like adjacent to the play area. And that's on their property. And then as you go farther down, I think, yeah, go back up to where the blue thing was. That one. I think that's the screening between this property and the adjoining property by the play area that we're referring to in this staff comment, where it talks about, and this,
Okay.
so if properties are dissimilar, then they should be screened from one another.
Right.
And what's the use of the adjoining property here?
Not this thing of lawn.
Thank you, board members. Any comment on 16?
Nope.
All right, moving right along. Okay, applicants provided plans do not show any exterior lighting exist on the site. It does include a lighting fixture cut sheet, but it's unclear where it will be installed. Number 17, staff recommends clarity where the lighting fixture is proposed and that no exterior lighting exists or is proposed.
Mm-hmm.
So, wait, keep that green, go back to that green text, so we can just read that for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So that fixture is non-compliant and will have to be changed out for something that's downcast and shielded. The fixture, you can keep the post. The post.
Understand that, guys? You hear that?
Yep.
Sorry, it's cute. I like it. Maybe you can.
Hey,
keep
there
it.
was
Oh, and
probably
that's not
a
the only
time back
one.
when planners thought that was all the rage.
It's cute. I
was-
like it. I'm sorry he has to go, but maybe
There's
they
a
could put
bunch of
something
those
in it.
too. We showed a picture of one, but there is several of these and they're shown on the landscape plan and the civil plan. So,
Maybe there's a way you can put like a shield in it so it looks the same on the outside, but it's still downcast.
some
Yes.
tinfoil.
Yeah, I suppose when it was lit, it wouldn't have the same aesthetic, so.
Yeah. Oh, it's really cute.
You can put a different fixture on it.
Just for clarity, you know, because there's enough, you know, kind of have more cars going in and out.
Have no lighting if they wanted, but if they do have lighting, it does have to be downcast. and
Wait,
shielded.
we've got a daycare going on and there's no minimum lighting required?
Like parking.
What about the children?
Can't spill onto the name.
Going at 3:30.
That's right, because darkness will set in and you can just see a Tesla backing into them, or a minivan. We don't got those anymore. So, all right. Okay, so I guess we got some work to do on the lighting there. Board members, any more comments on this?
So, sorry, I kind of got distracted by the other lighting fixture. That's on the building.
And there's 3 of those fixtures.
Yeah. Those seem fine to me.
Okay, so it's just on the building. You're not got it. Sorry, just lower it down. Keep going.
Yeah, that's the only
Okay,
proposed.
18 and then 19, and then we'll get to public comment. Thank you for your patience. Staff recommends the DRB require the lighting, landscaping, and or fencing to provide equivalent screening of the noise, light, and visual impacts of the new non-residential use to that which would be provided by the standard setback and buffer requirements. Staff considers the application does not currently meet the standard given the lack of buffering landscape or structures along the east and south boundaries. So let's take a minute to read that response in green below 18.
Okay.
Thanks.
Let me read the
You
standard.
might need to scroll. Okay, just the text just fits. All right, let's read this here. I could see the issue about on the east boundary there. That's the edge of the parking bays, but the building itself is really is that the issue?
So.
Or the
this-
shed,
so
or
this
the,
is why Delilah was going back up to the standard, because the standard, I think, is important to understand fully here.
okay,
3.06I requires principal buildings to retain a setback of not less than 65 feet. The carriage house is not a principal building, it's an accessory building, so standard 1 does not apply.
okay,
However, standard 3 says no longer is just about structures, it's about expanded orbital uses, structures, and parking areas. If those things are proposed within the setback as set forth in 1, which is 65 feet, the board may approve a modification of the width of the setback or landscape buffer. In doing so, the board shall find that the lighting will provide equivalent screening than what would have been provided by a 65-foot buffer. In no case may the setback be reduced below the standard requirement. So it's a little funny, 65 feet does not apply to the building. However, they do need to provide screening equivalent to 65 feet setback and 15 feet of buffer for the use and parking area.
How do you calculate that? What's equivalent?
It's pretty subjective.
Well, they got a big cedar hedge on the south side, right? I mean,
yeah. The south side is pretty substantial. It's the east side.
and the use that's being provided here, you're all done by what, 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock at night, you're packed up and you go on? Is that true or not? For non-residential use?
There are some evening adult classes. So that does happen until about 8 o'clock.
Would those be in the main building or in the carriage building?
Yes, only in the main. There would be nothing in the carriage house in the evening.
Well, this seems like a pretty minimal concern.
We also enhanced the landscape plan to add, like those shrubs that are on that east side. So when those 2 pines are removed, we do have shrub plantings that would go in their place between the existing trees that'll still remain.
Like,
It's
I understand you moved it 3 feet away, but hypothetically, if it was rotated 90 degrees, wouldn't that provide a substantial setback?
Handicap accessibility from the parking lot, just some of the flow of the programming. Additionally, we would be putting a fence attached, to the back for a play area for the kids to walk, be able to walk right out the door to play. So there's just some programming and flow of the whole campus issues that it makes the most sense for the orientation to be this way.
So Marla, is the setback on the east side, that's only what, 15 feet or something? What is that?
It's 10.
10? Even abutting a residential use?
Yep.
Wow. Board members, thoughts on this? Other board members?
And this is considered a side yard or the rear yard?
This is the side. This property doesn't have any rear yard, which is part of why it gets a little weird.
Okay. So you don't have to pick one side and call it
Nope.
front and rear?
Nope.
Okay. Okay.
When you have multiple fronts, the thing that you lose is the rear. You don't lose the sides.
Got it.
What's that area called D6 in between the two buildings? What is that? I can't. Sorry, that's hard for me to. It says remove. What is that? Remove gravel driveway.
Oh, between the two buildings. I
Yeah,
see.
between the two buildings. Yeah. Yeah. That.
Can I bring it back a little bit? So the question here
Yeah. Sure. Go ahead.
is whether the use and parking area are sufficiently screened as though they were buffered by 15 feet of landscaping and 65.
They'll get pretty dense.
Can get big.
They are deciduous, but they are very dense still, and I thought they provide some nice color right at the end of the drive aisle there when they do bloom. But we're open to other
Is there any
suggestions.
new plantings proposed on the east side of the new building?
No, there's existing trees there, and it's
Existing
know-
trees on the subject lot or the abutting lot?
both.
Okay.
And there is, Paul, I believe I understand your grade, you create a high point, I think, at the midpoint of that part of the building, and then you swale this and moves on to our site, correct?
Yeah, because we're lower than around the building.
Can we hop to 19 so that we can get some some public comment on this? Because I think it's germane to our discussion. Everybody okay with that? We'll hop to 19, then come back to 18.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The roof standards recommends the board discuss with the applicant how the roof will comply with the standard as far as if the applicant demonstrates satisfactory compliance with requirements, staff considers demonstration of the plans can be a condition of approval.
Architect working on this, and she can speak to that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, hi. So yes, the building roof is solar ready with all of the commercial building energy standards for roofs, walls, and beneath. So we do comply with the energy standards.
All right, thanks. Board members, are you okay with this, Marla? You're good? All right.
Yeah.
Board members, anything more on this 19? And then let's do some public comment.
No.
Okay.
So my notes are that we're going to go back to some things. We're going to go back to landscaping.
Landscaping, snow storage, yep. Landscaping, snow storage.
So
yep.
in the packet, there are some public comments that were received, and then I sent out some more to the board today as well.
Okay, let's take our oral public comments if that's okay.
Sure, I think that we have people both online and in person.
Okay, let's take our person here in person. If you would like to come up to either the lectern or the table, whichever you prefer.
Can I make a request, Dan?
Sure.
Can everyone who's online who would like to make a public comment kind of give us a little, you can ping me in the chat or do like a little hands up or something so that we have a sense of how much time we have?
Yep. And turn your camera on too. That's helpful as well too. And type your name in the chat if you have not done so. We'll take the public comment here in the building and then we'll go to the online and maybe staff can help me out who's here. So for, we have to swear her in, yes?
Nope.
No swearing in public comment. Okay.
Not on the right.
If you just want to introduce, make sure the little green light's on there, press the little push button so the green light comes on at the bottom of the yep, you got it?
Okay, so the green light's on.
Okay, if you want to just introduce yourself and then,
Sure. My name is Sarah Brutzman, and I'm at 4 Brewer Parkway, so I'm on the southeast corner for you. But the perspective from my property looking onto the property.
One of those. And then we'll show it to the board members during their.
So the old, and also share. I had met with trees were are kind of the commercial property next door to them. That's their kind of border there. So I just wanted to make the visual clarification more clear about what the trees look like that are coming down, because I don't feel like they're really represented there, and what the impact is from a visual perspective from the neighborhood's side of things.
Delilah, could you scroll down a little bit to, so is this basically the property line we're talking about here? The one that's pictured on the screen?
That
there?
is the east side looking south.
Yep,
And it does not include the large pines that are going to be taken out there. And so you don't actually see those at all in any
They're
of these
probably
trees.
over here, right?
I think they'd actually be, further up.
Yeah.
And then there's 4 on one side and 2 on the other, and then there's a very small, the smallest one is the one that's going to be left. And I did have a question about, you had said something about the Vermont trans mitigation, and Marla, and you said it kind of, but I couldn't hear what you had said.
Oh, sure.
And that's still happening. My concern is basically the impact of those trees coming down, and the impact on the amount of visibility that the whole Davis campus will have, then how it opens up completely the visibility of all of the, that's basically my desire is to share the visual piece of things at this point. So I did have that desire to do that.
well, if you want, you could, as you say, sort of, if you were, same as if you were submitting a letter, if you wanted to send that photo to Marla, you could email it to her and that would enter it into the record, so.
Absolutely.
And you have Marla's email address? I do. Okay, that'd be the best thing to do, and we'll be able to look at it when we deliberate, so.
So I don't see
I don't
any
see anybody in the chat.
chat, and I don't believe I see anyone with their hand up.
Anybody? No, I don't.
So I guess that's what we have for public comment. So if the board wanted to circle back, alternatively, the board can deliberate on these things and have a conversation at their next meeting.
Marla,
Yes, Mark?
did we want to at least acknowledge the public comments we got via email?
Yeah, before we do that, hold on a second. Did you have one more thing you wanted?
If you come to the microphone again, just so that they hear you and it goes into the record.
I guess I did have a question. You said it was subjective about the third part of the 3.06I setback and buffer strip adjacent to the residential district. Guess I was basic. I mean, when the first sketch meeting happened, that when they were discussing what was going to happen there, it seemed like the setback and the buffer. I asked about the trees at that point in time, and I was given the understanding that those trees would be protected. So I was relieved, and I was like, okay, great, this will be out that the trees were coming down, and I was actually pretty shocked. And so now it seems like setbacks and buffer or dense. I even saw the word dense. Here, dense evergreens fencing. So I was like, oh, and it seemed like that. In no case may the required side or rear setback be reduced below the standard requirement for the zoning district. So so it says in no case, but it's also subjective. Is that the right way to interpret that idea of those general provisions?
So I think this is the topic that the board needs to have some discussion amongst themselves on. So
okay.
I guess what I would invite from you, and tell me if I step out of line,
go ahead.
is, thus far, I think the board has really keyed in on some of these subjects because of comments that we've received from the public. So if there's any additional parts of the regulations, including the ones you just mentioned, that you'd like to draw there.
Porousness of a commercial situation, and certainly gift in terms of the kinds of activity that occurred earlier, given it was two noise mitigation in terms of, and I've made many comments about what I believe the level of absorption underground stream system.
Would be to continue to April 5th, because I don't think that they really need that much time to get these issues wrapped up.
Board members, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. And I think that it sounds like there's just a few comments that the applicant needs to clarify and provide additional 65-foot buffer. And I guess what I'd like to see is some additional thought and additional proposal in terms of making sure that it's meeting.
Yeah, I share Mark's concern on the same point about that supposed 65-foot equivalency, truly, with the public, that subjective seems like a pretty weak standard. Someone needs to make an argument, someone needs to make a showing that this is somehow under some set of criteria as good as.
Yep, I agree. The buffering concern.
Thanks, board members. And I'll just close this item before we decide to move it to the continuation. Yeah, this is an interesting one, because if this were a brand new building in construction and we got the commercial line next to a residential, we'd have a lot more robust discussion about this and all. But because it's been pre-existing, it's a little tricky, and I get the use. It's a tighter lot, and that's why I'm inclined with Smork and the representatives there. And you got the public. What was the date again? April
5th.
April 5th is the staff recommendation. Can we get a motion?
Yeah. I'll make a motion that we continue SB 22007 of DS Realty LLC to April 5th.
Second.
Thank you, Corinne. All those in favor of the motion to continue this application to April 5th, say aye.
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 All right. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, applicants. Thank you, members of the public, and thank you, consultants. Moving on. Item number 8, site plan application SB 22-004 Champlain Oil Company to amend a previously approved plan for a mixed-use commercial building on an existing 0.6 acre lot. The amendment consists of increasing the square footage from 13,818 square footage to 19,018 square footage by adding 1.5 stories, adding 9 residential units, and expanding the array of allowed commercial uses. 510 Shelburne Road. Who is here for the applicant? If you could introduce yourself.
I am. My name is Brian Cairns. I'm the owner of the parcel.
Okay.
Lucy Thayer, landscape architect, Trudell Consulting Engineers.
Thank you.
Tyler Cody, Rabideau Architects.
All right. Thank you.
Colin Johnson, civil engineer, Trudell Consulting.
Okay. It's the first time we've heard them, right? Correct?
Yeah, sorry, what was your first name again, Mr. Johnson?
Colin.
Oh, thanks.
All right. If the applicant and their representatives could raise their right hand, and you solemnly swear to tell the truth regarding this application under the pains and penalties of perjury.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. We do have staff comments on this. If somebody would just want to give a quick overview, and then we'll dive right in.
Sure, I'll do that. So we had approval probably back in 2020 for a commercial building, similar aesthetics. It was 3 floors of commercial office and commercial retail approved on the site back then. With COVID and costs associated with that, you delayed us for construction season, and that gave me time to think about how I really wanted to construct the building, really wanted in it, and came back with an. So we in front of you tonight to add, in addition to 1 additional floor, but adding 9 residential units to the commercial uses previous.
Okay, I have a very quick question just to get started, and I didn't look at the elevations. How would it compare in height with the lighting building across the street or just to the north?
It would be larger, I believe. It would be more like the Baker Street loss behind you, behind our parcel.
It would match roughly the roof line of that, is that what you're saying?
There are
I believe
perspectives.
so. Tyler can probably.
There's perspectives that will give you a good feel of the
Okay,
building.
we'll
with the
get into
surrounding.
that later then. Okay, thanks, that helps. All right, we're gonna dive right into the staff comments there. First one is regarding provision of options to acquire all necessary TDRs from ascending area as part of any application. The applicant must provide an option agreement to purchase one TDR equal to 0.83 acres from a designated sending area prior to approval. There was some feedback on that.
Yeah, so I guess one thing, Marla, can I ask one question before we kind of get into the meat of that, is that this is a project to amend a previously approved plan. So I think one question of clarification we had is if this is an amendment to an approved supply to this project, does this standard?
You mean which regulations are in place?
Yeah.
We have actually reduced the coverage from the previously approved site plan in this version. So same.
Gotcha. I think I understand the question. So for the board's benefit, when this was approved, so this is the site of the former Kegel Sitco. There's a little white building there now, but all the tanks have been removed. Applicant is that for a site that is completely redeveloped, there is no there's no retention of pre-existing nonconformities because the entire site is proposed to be demolished. So it was an error for the board to have allowed them to have overall coverage more than the allowable maximum in the zoning district, because that is one of the big three that the board can't allow waiver of.
All right, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, thanks, Marla.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted to ask the question. All right, so in response to that, we looked at the staff comment. We worked with staff and we have identified that another possibility. So there's two options. We're in multiple overlay districts, and this is specific to the urban overlay district. So there's two options provided in the urban overlay district for additional lot coverage. One is TDRs, which staff has noted in this report. The other option is open space. We have developed, through our discussions, we determined that the open space option would be the one we would like to pursue at this point. And to that end, we have provided an updated plan to staff today with that open space requirement that we would like the board to evaluate. So Marla, I'm not sure the best way if we should look at that plan now, or what's your recommendation?
Yeah, so ours are one option, and then like Lucy said, there's an option to do a park instead. I think we saw the park when Shearer Acura or whatever it was came in. No, they ended up doing TDR. So they're going with park. And that's perfectly fine. We had just proposed TDRs because we thought it was going to be easier. So the park that they're proposing, Lucy, you can annotate if you'd like, but it's sort of towards the top of the page that Delilah has showing now.
Yeah.
I think it's that whole area.
Oops.
And Marla,
Sorry.
Marla, if I could clarify. Marla, if I could clarify a little bit to the board. So, we got staff comments last week, and we decided, with the TDR, with this situation where we had to decide between TDR or this parklet. I mean, I had an idea of having this space be used by any retail tenant in that new side of the building. Not knowing what tenants I'm going to have in that retail spaces, we thought that maybe going with the parklet now and then keeping the option open that if in fact I get a retail tenant that wants to use this for outdoor seating, for their cafe or whatever that might be, that I could maybe possibly go back to you and the board and say, I'm going to do the TDR instead because it won't be necessarily an open park option at this point. I don't know if that's something that could be thought about as well.
Staff's position is that would be fine if you get approval to be, because both things are allowed.
I have a question about the semantics of the word open space. In the broader context of the discussion, the city open space is, of course, larger and has this implied public benefit or public access. In this context, what does it mean? Does open space just mean it doesn't have pavement on it? Or
No,
what?
I will read it, because we didn't excerpt it in the staff report, because we didn't think that they would go for it. So, for a civic, on-site open or civic space, they have to provide, they have to provide something that complies with one of the open space types, either a snippet, parklet, and or pocket mini park as enumerated in Article 11. And they must comply with all requirements and guidelines for that type. So the parklet has specific requirements.
You know, this is focused on seating, and it needs to be adjacent to a right-of-way and side. And the definition in the table is that it may serve the general public, customers, employees of a certain place.
My only question, and both Frank and I live within 2 blocks of here. I live on Proctor, and he lives on, were you on Hadley?
Hadley, yes.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm seeing on the north side there, I guess I'm trying to think of a way to make it, if we're going to have these as open space to meet these requirements, something a little more blurring the lines between what owned, this is part of the building versus I'm walking down the street. And if I want to sit in that space, I can.
That's actually not a requirement. Delilah, I'm going to steal your share. And I'm going to share the LDR. So
Thanks.
the open space type that they're proposing is this snippet parklet. So this one, and there's this, sorry, it's kind of like one side of the page and the other side of the page. So I'm going to just zoom in so it's legible.
Thank you.
A snippet parklet is allowable on parcels within lands in the urban design overlay. It's a small sitting area clearly intended to provide a welcome respite between or adjacent to buildings, may serve general public, employees, residents, or customers.
Gotcha.
Has to be between 600 and 4,000 square feet, must be adjacent to public right-of-way and sidewalk or an operable building entry. Seating must be the main focus of the space and must be present year-round. Landscaping must also be a primary component.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I'm going to say about it.
I have to say that there's a beautiful parklet. I mean, I was so pleased with it at the medical building. I think Pizzagalli did at the corner of Hadley and Shelburne Road. It was so nice. If you do something like that, it would be very nice. You know what I'm talking? Because
2 blocks away and stuff. So.
Well, we'd welcome to have you anytime.
All right. My main problem is that I can't get a Christmas tree there anymore. So. All right.
I don't know. You don't degrade does it anymore.
All right. We'll move on. Okay. 3.09 umbrella approval for multiple uses. Couple items there in red. So the comment from staff considers some of the requested uses are not compatible with the proposed building and therefore should not be permitted under an umbrella. Exclusion of a use from the umbrella permit does not prohibit the applicant from applying for the approved. They must simply obtain a site plan approval to do so. So staff recommends we exclude the red italic uses from the umbrella permit principally because their uses require different site amenities to function, with the exception of a cannabis dispensary, which may not be located within 1,000 feet of the property line of an existing childcare.
Yeah, I have an update on that. Apparently,
What's the distance to
cannabis,
the edge?
Yeah, it's less than 1,000 feet. That's why I said that.
Yeah, okay.
But cannabis dispensary is no longer regulated in the same way anyway. So cannabis dispensary is going to actually be stricken from our regulations pretty shortly, and be replaced by the compliant terminology and regulations. So I would still recommend striking it because it's not going to be allowed use there anyway. something else will go in its place.
Marla, I mean, my only thought was, I know it's 1,000 or less than 1,000 feet because of probably the edge
Right.
having, obviously children camps and things like that. And I totally understand. I just didn't want to have something that if the distance changes, if that's even even a possibility in regulations down the road, I didn't want to have this stricken from a use potential if in fact that distance doesn't become an issue anymore.
No,
That was my
absolutely. You'd be allowed to apply for it in the future.
Also, isn't there a childcare right on Hadley Road?
There is.
Yeah.
That we'll meet that 75% guideline. Until we have a tenant there, we can't tell you exactly what would be beneficial for a tenant if one panel's not transparent or it all is transparent. So right now it'd be very hypothetical. What we can do is say that and someone's secured, that we will be able to just make for sure that we follow that guideline.
Is that good, Marla? Or do you want?
Well, that's the 75%, but I think we should go really
Yeah.
go through all of them.
Okay.
Okay. Do you wanna-
Number 4, some glazing is proposed to be more than 7 feet high, but not all.
So
You
are these
identi- Go ahead.
Are these the new drawings, Marla, that we provided?
We just have what's in the packet. I don't know.
No, we do have the other ones.
There's a scaling that was going on, but that'd be a mullion that's going
Okay,
there.
cool. So that's that one. The next one is about 60% when.
And you were right on, Marla. It was exactly 58%. What we did is we made the 2 entrances on each side 1 foot wider each. So you can see that entrance there was a double door. It's now a single with side lights, and similar on the other side. And that hits us exactly at our 60%. Now, the elevation you're looking at here is actually the east elevation. We should be looking at the west elevation, which would be probably 202. Yeah, and you can see down below here. So I've dimensioned across the facade the glazing width and solid width and done the calculation that's in the lower right corner there, showing that we do meet the glazing requirement now.
Okay. So this is the trust and verify. We're just gonna go.
Yeah.
We're just gonna keep
Yeah,
moving.
thanks. Okay.
And then 40%
Marla,
across.
can I just ask
On Bacon Street.
quick
Oh,
question?
sorry, Mark had a comment.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I just had a quick question. So what you're showing is glazing, then none of that is proposed to be spandrel panel? It's all clear glazing right now?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, you're gonna have the verticals, but we're not gonna have anything the only thing that could be possible spandrel would be the non-transparent, but at least 75% of this is gonna be clear, if that makes sense, Mark.
Yep. Okay.
And I did a similar exercise on the next elevation along Bacon Street.
Okay.
And Marla had the number right on again. I think it was 53%, so.
Okay.
All right, we good on 5 and 6?
Yeah.
Board members, you okay? Moving on?
Yep.
All right, number 7, ask the applicant whether rooftop elements are proposed. Rooftop elements must be screened or grouped and integrated into the architecture of the building.
More of a hypothetical thing. Since we've gone to this new design, we don't have a full mechanical.
The type of screening is not specified in the regulations, and Lucy has some experience with this. If you can commit to some vertical panels matching the siding equal to the height of the rooftop units or something like that, but we can't approve a general condition that says.
What do you guys want to see?
You're the architect. Sorry.
I mean, Brian, we'd be okay with that, right? Screening.
Yes, I think so. Obviously, we're going to have rooftop units and elements of those nature, but I understand where you're coming from. Well, we would screen it with some of the siding, not obviously the brick, but the metal facade siding, So
where exactly is this visible from that we would have to screen it? Is it anywhere along from street elevation? I'm just wondering if a piece of mechanical is right in the middle of the roof, obviously no one's gonna see it unless you're
Right,
in an
yeah.
adjacent building.
So it'd be from the street. I mean, we're not
Okay.
looking for you to go all the way up to the top of, you know,
Okay.
Proctor Street and look down on it, but from.
Okay.
from
Well,
reasonable
definitely
distance.
be.
When we get a mechanical design kind of put together, we can even put that into our rendering program and get an idea if it will be visible from the perspectives that we have. So we'll get a good idea if it's visible.
I think though, to Marla's point is that if we anticipate there is going to be the possibility of screening, in order for them to approve it, they need to have the specific language right now.
Right,
or
but I
before
think
the-
that,
I
I
would-
think what Brian
before
and
the hearing
Tyler are
is
saying
closed.
is they're okay with the language that I used, right?
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Marla, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead,
If we're on
Frank.
building, unless this is covered somewhere else, we're talking about a substantial height waiver here. They're talking about having a building as tall as Bacon Street lofts. That's huge. I mean, are we going to address the issue of height waiver at some point?
There's no height waiver.
Behind, okay.
I have a weird, with the new LDRs are rooftop decks allowed or patios and amenities for tenants?
I'm sure they would be allowed. It's
okay.
Brian, do you want to talk about this now?
No, you don't have
Sure.
to. I'm just saying it's part of, we're trying to create an urban district here, and that's, there's some neat stuff going on around the county. You may be next to Shelburne Road, but it's pretty sweet on a sunny day, so.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it is a nice feature. I think in terms of this building, I think I'd rather not have people on the roof walking around, as residents walking around. So we are not proposing that at this time.
Okay, I just was curious, that's all. All right, let's move along to item 8, parking area width. This criterion is not met. The width of the building is approximately 1 to 3 feet, while the width of the parking and driveway is approximately 120 feet, excluding the center parking lot island. Hey, there's that center parking lot island again. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to modify their plans.
So we've provided, our response to this is we believe that there was an error in the staff calculation. We have a corner lot, and per the regulations, we are able to count the building width cumulatively. And when it's calculated cumulatively, we have 152 feet of building width compared to 120 feet of parking lot width.
Thanks, staff. You are correct, Ms. Thayer. Thank you.
Great.
All right, moving along, number 9. The existing 50-foot wide access on the southwest corner of the site on the provided plan as, quote, to Farrell Street. The applicant is proposing to reduce the connection between the site and the adjoining site from being completely open to a 25-foot driveway to the south. Staff supports this modification, but recommends the board ask the applicant to describe the restrictions of the existing 50-foot wide access easement for the purpose of evaluating whether the proposal is consistent with the requirements of the easement. And could you bring the plan up, only because I have some questions too as well, so.
Sure. Can I jump right in there?
Yeah, go
on
ahead, please. Yes.
Okay, so based on the deed, the 50-foot access easement is described as benefiting Champlain Oil Company, the owner, and is to be used in common with others for access to Farrell Street. So our interpretation of this easement is that it is meant to provide an easement to Farrell Street, and that the others is meant to be the users of Champlain Oil Company. The users is not specifically defined in the deed. So we think that we haven't changed the easement, and we still do we're consistent with the requirements of that. We've moved the access to a much safer location away from the Shelburne Road side of the parcel.
Okay, yeah, that'd be plan could be. So I just have a couple quick questions, only because I'm a scofflaw in this regard myself. And right now it's just if I'm leaving Chipotle and trying to make my way back and cutting through parking lots and going by the Walgreens and all. It's kind of a sea of asphalt and snow and gravel and stuff. So, is there going to be the ability, and I'm not asking that there be, but is there going to be clearer screening between like the north, the Walgreens parking lot and this property now? Is there going to be less people like me trying to cut through over to Bacon Street?
Yes.
Well, yeah. As you can see, we moved the access, the easement access to the rear of the parcel, further in back of Bacon Street.
Right.
Away from Shelburne Rd, as Lucy mentioned. Yeah. So it's a smaller easement, but we wanted to keep that flow to Bacon Street and Farrell Street for customers, mainly.
Right.
Just use traffic on Shelburne Rd.
And you won't be able to get through any more now, Dan, because of it's curbed. We have stormwater treatment in that parcel, that portion of and we also have landscaping in this island. So it will be a vegetated delineation of where the access route is.
Right. So if you're in Walgreens, the only way you can get to Bacon Street would be go to Farrell, turn right on Shelburne Road, and turn right again. There'll be there's still an opening there on the southeast corner. Okay.
Yeah, you could connect. Let me annotate really quick. It's
Okay, in the southeast corner, you would still be able to do. Okay, now it encourages people like me to blast through there.
Correct.
Okay. All right, did you get your answers on that, Marla, for number 9? On the easement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Frank, you have something?
Well, I'm not sure what relevance it has because I'm not quite grasping it. The deed is,
So they don't get themselves in trouble.
well, I mean, I question their interpretation, but again, it's outside our province.
All right. That being the case, let's move on. All right, number 10. Page 12, bicycle parking storage room. There is a bike storage room on the first floor. Please demonstrate that the storage room accommodates the required minimum bicycles and the commercial tenants have access to its use.
We have provided an updated first floor plan with actual bike racks that you could purchase shown within that floor plan and a clothes locker that meet these requirements. We've also discussed, and that room will be accessible to the commercial tenants.
Okay. So is this bike parking for the commercial or the residential or both?
Both.
Okay. Does that meet the standard, Marla?
Trust and verify.
Okay. Moving on. Number 11, board require the applicant to demonstrate that the crab apples in the Shelburne Road right-of-way will be allowed by the city of Burlington prior to allowing them to count towards the budget, landscaping budget.
Yeah, so we have been in contact with the city arborist, Vijay Komai, and he has wholeheartedly agreed that those can go there. So we provided that email to the city.
Great, thank you. Okay, parking areas, there it is, that 28% or 28 or more contiguous parking spaces, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 33 parking spaces are provided. Could you demonstrate that this criterion is met regarding the landscape island?
I could give you the specific square feet if that's helpful, but I think probably the graphic would.
Yeah, Lucy, we just lost our screens. Travis, we're looking at the screensaver.
There we go.
Thank you. Yep. I don't know.
So yeah, so the interior landscaped area is, let's see, I can tell you the required, let's see, interior
16. 16.
believe we needed like 1,542 square, there it is. So the 1,542 square feet, I believe, is what is required, and the interior islands provided is 1,724.
Okay. Board members?
I defer to staff to make sure that they agree that if that's the document and that meets the 10%, then I'm fine with it.
Okay. Okay, number 13, regarding the value of various elements. We, the board, need to determine whether to allow the proposed landscaping elements to count towards the minimum required landscaping budget. Staff has some increasing concern about the likelihood of perennial plantings to be maintained in perpetuity. It recommends the board consider a more general approach should they wish to continue allowing perennial plantings toward required minimums, such as allowing a certain value per square foot of perennial bed.
Can I
Yes,
explain
please
a
do.
little more fully? So the board's been allowing this, when a site is suitably landscaped, that an applicant can count perennials towards their required minimum landscaping budget. So we're ending up with things like we have 6 coneflowers and 9 daylilies and 11 hostas. And then in 3 years, Delilah equivalent has to go out and see if there are 3 coneflowers and 6 daylilies and 9 hostas. And that's really freaking hard. So what I'm proposing here is kind of the first time we're putting it out there, but what if instead of saying what is the value of those exact plants, the board establishes sort of a value per square foot of perennial bed. So Delilah doesn't have to go out and say how many hostas there are. She just has to go out and say, this is a well-maintained bed of perennials that has the value. And then we never worry about how much it costs again in the future. I think that'd be a lot easier to administer.
But how does she assess the value? I mean, based on what? Well-maintained equals value? I don't get it.
So, but it doesn't have to be, if they have 6 daylilies and then in the future they have 6 scraggly daylilies, it still counts.
Versus if it's a well-planted, lush bed of plants, I don't care if it's 6 daylilies and 2 hostas, as long as it maintains its lush, vigorous, growing look.
I'm asking, what you're doing is substituting a hard standard of expenditure.
And over time, typically, the cost of plants increases. So in order for them to maintain a vigorous growing bed, they're going to at least be meeting the minimum of what they were required, not the minimum, the value of what they were originally required to invest in the plants, or more to keep it in its vigorous state.
So I'm just throwing this out there. We don't necessarily have to go there tonight, but, this is a pretty competent applicant who could probably say, well, we have X square feet provide us a calculation of what $13,455 represents in terms of square footage. So it seemed like it was worth at least thinking about.
I'm not adverse to it. I just wondering if it becomes a subjective review in the future, in terms of, it's an interpretation of if it's a vigorously growing perennial bed.
Yeah.
I totally see where you're coming from, not wanting to have to go out and count, dozens of perennials and make sure it's exactly what was planted originally, because obviously, over time, one dies, you replace it. You might not replace it with exactly what was there before. So I really do get where you're coming from. I'm just wondering about how we set a subjective review for future evaluation.
Well, do we want to kind of let it stew? Applicant, how do you feel about this concept? If the board were to take your 13, say that you're approved, but instead of having to maintain the exact perennial count that you have, you just have to maintain those areas of perennial beds, would that be something you could live with?
Yes, I could personally, because I think What we're looking for is a landscaping of a site.
Right.
And if you're proposing a bed, it's one thing when you have this large deciduous trees that are going to get larger in time. But if you're talking about maintaining a bed, you're talking about maintaining a portion of a site. So I think it's a good thing we should explore.
And Marla, if you're asking me as the applicant, I agree. I 100% agree with you in terms of having to try to, go back to the application, be like, oh, that's a daylily, but they're not daylily now. So, I completely agree with your assessment, and probably a good thing if this was adopted, down the road.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say, I think we could probably do some sort of condition that says, this is approved as proposed, and the condition is that plantings in the defined bed areas as A, B, C, and D shall be maintained with an appropriate mix of yada, yada, yada to assure equivalent coverage at the time of initial planting or something. So I'm sure we can figure that out.
All right, so we'll let it stew then?
We'll let it stew,
Yeah.
All right. I have a quick question on number 13.05, stormwater management, only because I'm trying to do more stormwater work in my day job at regional planning. But how's the stormwater going to be treated on this property?
Their bioretention practices or their contact filter units, it's a pre-made bioretention practice. So this, everything's lined, and there's actually 4 treatment areas. And then it's connected eventually with a new storm manhole on Shelburne Road, which goes to Burlington.
Okay, so you're treating the required standard of the 1 inch, or what is it, 1.05, or the okay. All right. Is any of the retention buried under the impervious at all, or no?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. There's 2. There's one in the.
Could you bring out the plan just so you can maybe draw on or point to the corners or something?
Is this something that would be better shown on the supplemental sets that you sent today, or on the existing plan set?
Any plan that you picked, Delilah, would work.
So the back parking island, the center island that runs north and south, there's 2 structures right there. Those are pre-made, precast structures which are open at the top, and they'll be planted, and they're filled with a bioretention mix. They're approved by the state through their stormwater program, and there's going to be curb inlets on each side of each one of those structures, and that'll treat the entire back parking lot, and part of the slip lane. There are 2 standard other bioretention areas, one on the Shelburne Road side of the building in the front, and then one on the southern side of the slip lane right there.
Okay. And the ones on the island, are they similar to the ones that the city of Burlington did kind of on Pine Street over near the new Champlain College dorm building, Taj Mahal Hotel? Basically, there's a little concrete box with inlets right in the edge of the parking kind of thing, or edge of the right of way. Yeah. Okay. And they're slightly lower to the ground, right? They're sort of below the level of the parking. They sink down a bit.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thanks very much. All right. So, thanks for bearing with me on last one, item 14. Please discuss how the roof will comply with the energy standards.
Okay.
Tyler, you're muted.
Staff, how will the roof comply with the energy standards?
Tyler's supposed to take the areas.
Yep. So it's just standard practice now to design the roofs with an additional 8 pounds per square foot of load. I noticed that we used to use 5 pounds per square foot for future solar panel installations. We currently use 8 now, and it's just built into the structure with every project we work with. The structural designer will have the structural capability to install solar panels.
Okay. Thanks. Board members, any more questions for the applicant? Okay, do we have any members of the public online?
Yeah, I get, this deed thing is nagging at me because other users clearly doesn't mean residents, it means other property users. And I'm not sure how that impacts anybody. I mean, that's just, I think, obvious as a matter of legal interpretation of the deed. And I think you guys ought to look into that. I don't know precisely how it impacts the project because I don't have a clear enough understanding of it yet, but you should look at that more carefully. Your interpretation is wrong. And you should think about the implications of that.
Frank, so we, in our, the deed that goes back when this, before Walgreens was there, when Ben Franklin's was even there, there was a deed drawn up. There was a change in wanted to put a sign out by Shelburne Road. And in that, we allowed them to put it on our property, in that we got a deed to be able to get, at the time, our transport trucks from Farrell Street to the property. So it was put in the deed that we have access across. And we're not saying we restrict other people that want to cut through there, like yourself or anybody else. That's not what we're trying to say. It's just the access for anybody that wants to get from Bacon to Farrell without having to go on the Shelburne Road. And we just thought that that made sense, having those roads, Farrell and Bacon, accessible through the rear of the property. That's all.
Okay, I don't know enough to comment further. It concerned me. When I heard the interpretation, that was all.
Thank you, Frank. So no members of the public, nobody in the chat? No. All right, staff, do you think we have enough information or?
Yeah.
Okay, do we need any more submissions from them or clarifications? Okay. That being the case, board members, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing.
I'll make a motion that we close site plan application SP 22004 of Champlain Oil Company LLC and Bacon Street Properties.
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Frank. All those in favor of closing the hearing on the application SB 22-004, say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Okay, we're gonna, board members, it's 9:51. Are you okay if we keep cranking a little bit?
No.
No?
I think we kind of need to.
Yeah, we got a lot.
I mean, we
Let's
got
do the
two
best
more items on the
let's do the best
agenda.
we can till we run out of steam here.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay. Site plan application of RHT SP 22-003 of RHTL Partners LLC to modify a previously approved plan for a 10,000 square foot automotive sales, service, and repair building on an existing 2.61 acre lot. The amendment consists of constructing a 3,155 square foot building expansion, 1795 Shelburne Road. Who is here for the applicant?
Yeah, my name is Jeff Oleski with Catamount Consulting Engineers. I'm some sidewalk and access improvements and a patio and a seating area, outdoor seating area, as well as some landscaping improvements that we're proposing with the project. But really, the function, use, scale, size, number of employees, everything of that nature would more or less stay the same as currently exists right now, and there'd be no changes to access or utilities, other than some minor things to address some of the outstanding zoning regulations that we need to comply with. I'll guess I'll leave it short at that, given the time of night right now, and hand it back over to the board or staff to start going through the comments. And I will just say the first 4 or 5 comments are more related to building architecture. So I believe Sarah Butler will be presenting or replying to most of those as we go through them here.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we'll dive right in. First comment, criteria regarding entry facing the primary road is not met. Can you describe how you might modify the plans to comply with these standards?
Is it possible to show the sheet that has the architectural elevations on it?
Do you have the name of the sheet?
It's A400.
Yeah, so they sent over one today. Sarah, is that the one that you want to show, or do you want to show the one that was in the packet?
No, it would be fine to show the one that we sent today.
Okay, so that's the rendering. Hold on, give me a second.
Yeah. So while she's pulling that up, so the building design draws from the existing configuration, which has the entrance on the side. And I believe that was probably originally a result of the fact that this building sits about 7 feet below the road. So, and it's pretty close to the road. So what this rendering doesn't show is that grass in front of the glazing on the left-hand side is actually a berm or bank that steeply cuts up to the sidewalk. So putting an entrance on that facade, especially an accessible entrance, which would involve ramps, is a little bit infeasible just due to the topography. However, I do feel that the configuration of the new design is much more street facing, and it has a large glazed glass element on the corner that indicates entry, even if the door is actually on the side.
Okay, Marla, would that still meet the standard or no?
No.
The entry has to face the primary road, basically. So if the door was,
It could be a corner door.
could be a corner door on the, basically you need something on the east side of the building is essentially what we need, right? Yeah. Yeah, the standard's pretty clear and it's a must. It's not a should or it'd be nice to, so that's something that would need to be tweaked. At least that's the way I'm reading it, and staff concurs, so.
Jeff,
Could we-
Jeff, from a civil engineering perspective and a grading perspective, could you elaborate a little bit on the hardship of that front entrance that they're requesting?
Yeah, I think a couple factors as we look at the site and understanding that this is an existing non-conforming structure as it currently is constituted, and we're kind of dealing with an existing layout and an existing access location, and there certainly is an expansion and a remodel, but it's certainly not a complete reconstruction. So we're a little hand tied to the east face of the building, and I think that's the existing conditions site plan. And so if you see where's that kind of the existing flower bed is there on the east side of the building, you see those contour elevations. We're a good, like you said, 7 or 8 feet below that from Shelburne Road.
Limitations, legal or development constraints, blah, 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 all sorts of reasons. So the board would have to find that the urban design overlay is one of the things that can be waived. And the way I read the waiver is it says the dimensional requirement under this article being Article 14, which is site plan review standards, not urban design standards. And urban design overlay are not dimensional standards either. So I don't think that there's a waiver authority here. But again, you can put it on the corner. It doesn't have to be at the
building, yeah.
Yeah, obviously, we're providing pedestrian access on a frontage along the front facade or road-facing facade of a building. I think from our standpoint, it's just a practical purpose where we have a door there. You walk in, incorporating some type of pedestrian accommodation to get from ADA compliant ways is almost impossible at this point. Frontage and aesthetic to this by incorporating a landscaped paver patio area and an aesthetic nice stone retaining wall with a picnic table and an area along the road frontage that we think complies or at least attempts to address this idea of a road frontage aesthetic with the building but as far as the ability to waive the entrance requirement or not, And I guess we'll have to comply with it if it's something that can't be waived. It may still not be the primary entrance to the building, but it could be just an additional door that accesses that patio from a different location if that's amenable to the board.
It doesn't need to be an ADA compliant walkway. It just says a direct separate walkway to the primary road, at least 8 feet wide and may meander. I know across the street, the CCOM bank, which Jeff, you worked on, has stairs. And that met the standard. Harbor Freight has stairs.
I think, Marla, can I, or Dan, can I weigh in
go
on
ahead.
this?
Go ahead, please.
Sure. The curb cut, walk into the parking lot and then to the building, it's not the way the codes are written. And
Yep. We know what the requirement of the regulation is. The applicant now knows. The problem of redesigning it to comply is his. I'm wondering if we could move on.
Yeah, okay. I'll just say one comment before we move. I mean, I think there's, in some ways, there's an opportunity to do something more creative than a set of stairs. Invite people into the patio space that's going to be having the cookouts and the hot dogs to draw people in and come buy a new car. I think there's something you could embrace the pedestrian environment and draw people down a sloped ramp into, transparency of glazing.
Yes, the glazing will have clear visibility into the building. It'll have to meet the energy code, but it's not reflective or heavily tinted.
Okay, thanks. Quick question, board members, how I'm wired up so I can keep going, but I want to be cognizant of how late you guys want to go. 10:30? All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that.
Okay. We'll keep cranking on here. All right. 8.06, rooftop mechanical equipment. Location of the building 8 feet below the adjoining running places particular emphasis on compliance with this criterion. Did you guys thoughts on this, applicant?
Yep. So we actually are raising the parapet about 18 inches from where it is currently. And we did a sightline study that showed that would.
Sure.
Yeah, we don't have a cornice in that it projects differently from the face of the building, but there are reveal lines in the metal panels, and there is one at a cornice line. This is the Mazda prototype, which obviously that's not your concern, but that's part of the contemporary design, and we haven't provided the cornice, traditional cornice.
Well, it says
Can we bring it up and ask our resident architect to weigh in?
I mean, I would call that not a cornice detail, but I would also say that is sort of the current trend, especially in these styles of buildings and dealers across the street at the Toyota Heritage dealership. I would struggle with making them meet it when it's sort of like, unless it's a requirement in the design overview district, but more of like a, something that projects out 4 to 6 inches and is 6 to 10 inches high kind of thing. So it still looks like a panel, but it's got some dimensional to it. And I'm wondering if I would say then we're meeting the classic or the intent of the code. So I'm saying that right now it doesn't have any sort of cornice.
A pop out just to break the plane. I think that'd be pretty easy to accommodate. Still be the same material. It would just have a little bit more dimension to it.
Yeah. Something that breaks the plane and doesn't just be a vertical line up kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're safe to agree with that.
Yeah.
Agree to it.
Okay. Board members are going to move on to number 5. Regarding the relationship of the structure and site to adjoining on the property and the existing facade to remain, if any, in order to evaluate whether this criterion is met.
So the building next door is a concrete block building with a pitched metal roof. So our proposed renovation, new materials are metal siding, although they're of a much higher quality than what the roof is on the building next door. And then the remaining portion of our building, which is actually to the west and mostly the southern facade of the portion of the shop that we're not changing, that is also concrete block. So we do have a compatibility of language of materials.
Okay, and is the entire area that's facing the street being redone?
Yes.
Okay. Does that answer your questions, Ma? We're good? Okay, I'm gonna move on. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Number 6, on page 7 regarding waste disposal. Can you demonstrate compliance on access management? Staff considers this criterion is not met for the property to the south. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to provide in their plans to record a cross-lot easement to the benefit of the adjacent property to the south at the southwest portion of the site.
Access across the back.
Hold on a second,
west-
Jeff. You're talking about a new easement on the south, right?
Yeah, I think he's getting around to it. Keep going.
Yeah, okay. Keep going.
Sorry. Sorry. But so, I mean, and maybe pulling up the proposed site plan would or existing condition site plan would help demonstrate this a little bit better. But the main concerns we have with that is that the western portion of this building, both now and proposed, is really a service, the primary service access location for the building, as well as home to, as alluded, the storage shed and concrete pads, and then will ultimately be the screened dumpster enclosure. And providing an easement and access to the property to the south along this western property line would probably be pretty, problematic to the traffic flow and use of this site. Given that existing easement and access to the property to the west, we just don't know if there's really enough of a benefit from this additional easement to make that encumberment, something that the user of this lot can work with.
Yeah, Jeff, I don't think that the intention here was to make an actual connection, just to provide the legal document so that should the uses of the property change.
As long as there was that somehow be tied into a change in use of this lot or only be allowed for future purpose. I mean, as you can see, while this property is being used as under its current constitution, but if it's just a matter of strictly adding the easement lines there, a 30-foot wide easement or something for potential future use, that's something we can look at.
I have a quick question for staff. Is this actually an easement that has to be recorded and that the property owner to the south could exercise that right? Or no?
So I have to go back to the language. Sorry.
And that would be our concern is that, if it is granted that the property to the south would have access and use to that's when it becomes problematic for the owner.
Well, that's the whole point, isn't it? Of the requirement. I'm not saying it's a good requirement, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think the purpose of these cross-lot easements is to keep traffic obviously off the primary roads and create some interlot connectivity, like we were just talking about with the Champlain Oil project. But given the use of these two lots now and how they operate and function, providing that type of easement now doesn't seem to necessarily, work or accomplish anything. That's all.
To provide a driveway connection to any adjacent commercial lot.
Yeah, if you scroll up just a bit to the bold text, I think that's what's.
But, and maybe this is
Must provide a driveway connection to any adjacent commercial lot, period. Or the applicant must provide an easement to do so in the future when circumstances may change. In other words, I don't know. Must provide an easement.
But that's only if the adjacent property owner does not want to provide for that connection.
Right. So this involves and if adjacent property owner does, then you have to provide it now.